What's going on, YouTube? We're back at it for another video, and today we're going to be talking about those tips, tricks, and strategy on how to get more wins on the Survivor side of things. Now, number one tip that I need to throw here at the very beginning, because I'm tired of repeating myself when it comes to random queues and trying to wrangle these survivors in, is the simple fact that survivors need to stick together from start to finish. It is going to be your best way to combat with that demon and overpower that demon consistently throughout the entire match all the way up until that win. Considering it only takes one person to be the downfall of the entire team, giving that demon more power than he needs in order to overcome the rest of the team by that point. This is a 4v1 situation. That demon should always be winning a 1v1 situation with a survivor, no matter what. If it wasn't the case, obviously, it would be a very unbalanced game, and there will be some scenarios where survivor can win that 1v1, but it's going to take that skill, upgraded character, and understanding of how to play around the different things that the demon can actually throw at you. But that being said, we'll be going through a full run of some gameplay footage in one of these matches that showcases in the beginning how well you can do even if you make a couple of mistakes in order to overpower that demon by utilizing that teamwork and sticking together, and then at the very end showcasing how one person can be the downfall of that team. Now, I've got more than a few things to cover with this video, so let's get straight into that gameplay. Now, at the beginning of the match, obviously we'll be spawned in a random location, but you'll immediately want to start heading towards one of the closest buildings, as you'll need to start gathering up those weapons, any type of loot that you can possibly need. Get that stock up on your ship, and you'll also want to turn on your flashlight, as not only will the flashlight reduce the amount of fear you'll take in dark areas, but it'll also reveal hidden lootable items around buildings or inside of the buildings, and these can be crucial, especially for late game moments, to finding some of those little bit of resources that you may have needed in order to secure yourself that win. Now, one thing to also note about the crate, you'll notice we got a purple one right off the bat. We're doing pretty good. We got 3 upgrade material out of that, but you want to mark each one of those locations. So not only can you get those upgrades, but the rest of your team will also have that upgrade material pop out of that chest. So you want them to swing by that, grab that up, and maintain that power level as quickly as possible, and maintain that everybody else has the same power level. Now, from this point, you'll notice up in the top right portion, El Brujo's hut is going to be our next map piece location, but we'll head over to the right and start hitting up Mama's Liquor, because in the very beginning, right now, the demon doesn't know where we're at. So essentially, we've got the perfect opportunity to start hitting some of those locations that may be more packed with loot or weapons that we could possibly need, and could also have some crates. And considering we're on the very edge of the map, more than likely we won't be coming back to this location. Occasionally you might. This could be one of the locations for one of the objectives, but you can't go wrong with trying to grab up some of these early materials. And you'll notice immediately we get a legendary chest. Right now we're up 7 upgrade points. Had we not hit this location, and later on the objectives are nowhere near this location, we would have been missing out on not only the legendary weapon, but those upgrade materials early on that are going to make us completely overpowered against the demon, as we'll showcase here coming up shortly. Now, I can't stress enough how important it is to utilize this type of strategy within any match that you may be playing, considering there's a lot of things that we gathered from this, not only when it comes to ammunition and healing resources, but you'll notice here in a moment, off to the left portion of the screen, we'll have a little flash of light, and that's going to show how important the flashlight can also be at finding some of these lootable items. As the only thing that I was looking for was a crossbow, double barrel, or a boomstick would have done great for me at the same point, but I'll have further increased damage off of the crossbow, and lucky enough it ended up being a blue rarity version. So now by the time the demon finds us, I'm going to be more than capable of taking out anything that he comes or starts spawning in for us. Now, one thing to key highlight right here in the importance of stealth is playing with a buddy, Willie, who hadn't really been playing the game all that long and didn't know the importance of stealth and how to maintain that stealth in the very beginning. There are 3 things you don't want to do at the very beginning of a match before the demon finds you. One is going to be firing a weapon. I'm not sure whether or not the crossbow actually makes a noise, but I know for a fact every one of the other weapons will. So I'd keep it in good rule of thumb to not only not use the crossbow as well, just to make sure that the demon doesn't know your location, but driving a car and having your fear level at high will also be another thing that'll mark you on the map for that demon, and he'll know your exact location and be able to come over to you. As you'll notice right now, within 30 seconds of Willie driving that car, the demon's already on top of us, possessing some of those units. But lucky enough, utilizing the strategy of hitting one of those high loot spots before we actually came over to the Brujo's hut, we were already ready to take on whatever that demon's able to throw at us. So even though we do have a careless mistake happening at the beginning, and now the demon is on us and he will be on top of us all the way until the end of the match, we're able to take out anything that he throws at us, minimizing his power creep and minimizing the amount of time that he's able to slow us down as we go from each one of these objectives. I can't stress it enough, you do not want to rush these map objectives. If there's spots that you haven't looted in between each one of these objectives, it's a good idea to stop by there, grab up as much as possible, look for upgraded rarities of weapons, constantly try to find those crates. That way, by the time that we actually reach the first objective, generally the entire team is fully upgraded and ready to combat with anything that demon throws at them. And at the same time, you don't want to split up in these moments. You may notice that I may be a little bit of a distance from my team right now, but I'm pretty much a stone's throw from them. I maintain that distance at all times. I'm constantly checking where they are on my mini-map, but I'm making sure that I'm at a distance where I can easily run back and be able to help them out if anything does go awry. Now, sadly, within this match, this is one of those bugs that was in the game prior to the update recently, that I haven't had this issue since the update. But you'll notice there's no mics on the left side, so I'm having to communicate with my buddy Clutch over here through my stream in order to have him relay information to the rest of the team, considering I have no communication with the rest of the team. So we've got more than a few problematic, frustrating things to deal with within this match, but for the entire first portion of this game, we do fairly well. We're utilizing the proper strategy, we're sticking together, and we're able to overpower that demon consistently, and you'll see that as the gameplay goes on. Now you notice we have the next map piece location. I've already marked it on the map, and we already know the demon's on top of us, so now is the time that we need to start utilizing the cars. And you'll notice there is going to be a trend where the Amanda character is consistently kind of going on their own way. We'll see how that becomes problematic later on, but another key moment right here. You want to think about, your teammates in this moment. Say if you're playing with a support character, you see some shimps, you definitely want to mark those locations. Now, again, didn't have communications, so Willie, as Lord Arthur, decided he was going to get out of the car as well, thinking this was one of those moments, and ended up having another moment where eating time up. Now, one thing to also note is you do not want to drive the car into a possessed unit. It will destroy that car fairly quickly. It doesn't happen in this moment, but trust me when I say that is a very easy demon tactic to play on survivors that don't have much knowledge, as they will try to stand in front of that car and pretty much get it to the point where it's completely disabled and you won't be able to utilize it. That way they can keep constantly applying that pressure as you're going on foot to the next area, slowing you down and eating up that time. Now, time is one of those things that we need to consider. Essentially, in each match, you're going to have about 18 to 20 minutes to loot and grab these map pieces. Trust me when I say this, you only need 2 to 3 minutes per objective. So I say by the time it hits 12 to 10 minutes, that's when you need to start pushing on the objectives and at least have that third map piece so you know where those locations are. Depending on a lot of different factors between matches, more than likely you will have all three of these map pieces within the first 10 to 15 minutes. I believe we have that done within this match as well. But at the same time, you really want to utilize all that effective time that you have to really empower each one of your survivors, find as many crates as possible, and maximize the resources you have available to you. Now, one thing to talk about with this section is going to be traps. You'll notice as soon as I'm playing as Ed, so I have a special flashlight that disables traps that the demon has set, or trap locations that he can set for a certain amount of time. I went over to that chest and you'll notice it had a blue flame to it. That meant that the demon had actually set a trap on one of these crates. In certain instances where you know the demon's around you, he's been setting up traps around you, it's a fair assumption to assume that that crate may be trapped. Now, in the event that it is trapped, a solid demon player will put the mini Ashes trap in there. There's 2 traps that they can set on each one of these crates. One's going to be the Ashes hand, which will do a decent amount of damage and fear to you, whereas the mini Ashes is going to be the most detrimental to any teammate on your or on your team, I should say. But what it's going to do is not only will it deal a small amount of damage and increase your fear, but it will steal items from you, such as your shimps, your amulets, your ammunition, your matchsticks, and it can actually even steal your upgrade materials. So anytime that you grab up an upgrade material, you want to make sure that you spend it immediately. You don't want to be sitting on that, because if you have that in your inventory and you go to open up one of those crates that's trapped with the mini ashes, they could end up stealing that from you, which can be problematic in upgrading your character and having to find some more of those crates. But in the instance that that does happen, trust me, there's more crates than you possibly need to get those upgrades maxed out. Like I said before, there's been plenty of instances where I've been completely upgraded by the time that we actually hit the first objective. Now, that being said, there's one way to combat those crates in the instance that you know for a fact that you've already run into mini ashes on some of those crates, and you want to make sure that you're not able, or the mini ashes aren't able to take some of your ammunition, your shimps, or amulets. You could just go into your inventory and drop everything that you have. As far as I know, they're not able to take your weapon. I haven't really tested that just yet, but if you drop everything that you have, or if you don't have anything on you, it'll say something like -2 matchsticks, even though it won't take any matchsticks. I'm not sure if it's a bug or not, but in instances like that, it may be good to do it that way, but that could take up some time, so it may be even easier for you to deal with somebody that's possibly focused on melee, doesn't have shimps on them or amulets. Doesn't matter whether or not they lose ammunition, because they're more than likely just going to be utilizing their melee. In those instances, it may be a good idea to get them to open up that crate, as not only will they have more health, but at the same time, it's not going to affect them as badly as, say, somebody that's in the hunter's class or support or leader that may need that ammunition or those shimps more specifically. The shimps are going to be the biggest thing. But for a hunter class, if you lose a good portion of your ammo, that can be very detrimental to the DPS of the team. Now, you notice right now, sadly enough, running into things can destroy the car, so you want to make sure to keep a note of that anytime that you're running into trees, rocks. It can do a small amount of damage, but as we were going up this hill, I was consistently looking back, making sure that my team was good. We had a couple of possessions happen, and you want to make sure that you're constantly maintaining an eye on the person that's at the very end, especially if you're at the very front. You want to keep looking behind you. I had to do that even more so in this match, considering we didn't have communication. So if one of them, especially if they were kind of lagging behind, you're going in a line to a certain area, that last person could get honed in by that demon. If there's no communication, you won't know unless you see their health bar just completely dropping. And by the time that they actually get downed, that's one of those things that can really further increase the power level of that demon. And slowing the power level of that demon, or the power creep essentially of that demon, is going to be the main thing that you want to do as you progress through the match. It's going to be one of the easiest things to do as long as we stick together from start to finish. The more that we can stick together, the easier we're able to take on any one of those threats he may be throwing at us. Now, here's another one of those key things that you want to talk about when it comes to, or another tip to throw out there. Sometimes you may be in a location, the demon's around you, and may start trapping some of those main areas or main exits. We're going to take one thing that I call an obscure exit. You could be utilizing this as a window in a building, or possibly going through a certain spot where there's not going to be any traps over there, or ones that could be set. Generally, the devs did a good job of placing some of these traps outside of certain windows and certain areas where it would seem like an obscure exit, but if you played the demon enough, you know where some of these traps are, and that's one of those locations we can exit from without being able to actually set off any traps or have anything that could be slowing us down or giving that demon a little bit more power. But by this time, you already notice it's 12 minutes in. We've got the last map piece. We've been looting quite a bit, and we really haven't had to expend much on resources, so we're going to head over to that first objective now. We've got plenty of time to deal with this, and we're amply ready for that first encounter. We've got plenty of those upgrade points already in, and we're ready to take on anything that demon can throw at us. Now, you'll notice immediately as soon as I got close to the objective, I had that demonic dash. He put a lot of fear on me. At this point, I'm at a high fear level. He can possess me, and as a hunter class, this is a very problematic scenario. You've already noticed how much damage I've been dealing. Hunters can be a double-edged sword that as soon as you get possessed by the demon, they can utilize the same power that you've been utilizing against them, against your own teammates. And trust me when I say there's been more than a few times I've been possessed and I've wiped out my entire team in one possession. So it is a good rule of thumb, whether or not you're playing as a hunter class or, anybody or multiple people have fear up. You want to hit one of those campfires before you start the objective. Make sure everybody's low on fear. That way, during the objective, nobody can get possessed and cause some of that chaos in certain events, especially when you've got a whole lot of those basic units, elite units, maybe even just after a possessed unit has been attacking your team. They've disrupted you, slowed you down from taking out the regular units that'll be all around, or the AI units essentially, and then just jumps into that next person and causes further chaos and more focus on that singular person rather than clearing the objective itself. Now, you may have noticed before we started this objective, I was able to hit the outer edge. Now, generally, the objective area isn't that big, but on the outer edges, there may be a couple of traps, generally 3 to be exact, and I was playing as Ed, so I used that special flashlight to disable those outer edge traps, essentially. But one of the best strategies is to kind of huddle around the center of the circle. That way you can make sure you're not running into those traps and you kind of be back to back in a circle. Because solid demon players are not going to spawn all of their units into just one location of the objective. They'll try to pin you between different units, try to get you hyper focused on the first ones they spawn. That way you don't know, or you don't notice the ones coming up behind, and they get a bit of that damage in. And then they'll also throw in the boss unit, just causing further chaos. Now, you'll notice we've been doing a fairly good job. We took out the boss unit fairly quickly, and all of a sudden, you don't notice too many units on the field, if any, and there's a bit of a lull period. There's nothing getting spawned. We've essentially shut down that demon, and he's stuck on cooldowns right now. That's when you know you've been really doing a solid job. You're getting everything done, but again, I do hit one of those mistake moments where I went to the outer edge, ran into one of those traps. Each time that happens, not only are we getting fear, maybe taking a bit of damage, but at the same time, giving that demon a little bit more power. So you want to kind of avoid that. That's why I say sticking to the center of the circle is your best bet. And at the same time, you notice there's a bit of clutter around the edges of this. So if you're all kind of all around the circle, somebody has that, makes a call out for that boss unit. It may take you a minute to find them with all this clutter around the area. So you don't want to get stuck up in one of those moments. But again, we get another lucky moment, just like the legendary chest at the beginning, the purple chest, and now we've gotten the legendary shotgun. Now, I have to make this stated: the legendary shotgun, the legendary revolver, and the legendary boomstick. All weapons that you don't necessarily need a hunter class to make them as powerful as they can be. Obviously, legendary weapons are going to be extremely powerful on their own, but the legendary shotgun and the legendary boomstick are some of the heaviest hitting weapons in the game. Anytime you find them, whether or not you have somebody with a maxed out damage of ranged weapons, you should be picking that up and trading it out for something else. Somebody should be utilizing that, even if it is a melee player like Henry the Red. They're still going to be dealing some serious damage with that. Now you'll notice the objective was fairly close to us. We drove over to it, but we didn't start it immediately. There's a couple of houses outside of it. We want to restock a little bit, get as much ammunition as possible, resupply on some of those healing resources, amulets, shimps. You want to make sure that you get this done each time, and some of these objectives will be fairly far in between. And like I said before, each objective is only going to take about 2 to 3 minutes to complete, so we have got, 6 minutes left, 7 minutes almost. We've got plenty of time. We could even hit the location just off to the other side of this and then come back by the 4-minute to 3-minute mark and still be able to finish this objective. I've done it plenty of times. Trust me, you have plenty of time to try and restock on those resources. Now, the demon will still be rolling around us and spawning some things in, so you'll need to watch out for that. You definitely don't want to get caught up. Obviously, you saw Amanda got caught off by herself. That's how quickly somebody can go down. If you're not sticking together, things can go pear-shaped pretty quickly and give that demon a lot more power. And you just want to make sure you can slow that power creep as much as possible. Now, you may have noticed that Amanda's kind of been going off on her own here and there. It happens. I'm gonna chalk it up to the fact that we can't communicate, because Amanda has done a fairly good job throughout this entire first portion, just handling herself. Even if she has run off on her own a few times, it's not exactly the worst player in there, but there will be some careless mistakes that she'll make later that will lead to the downfall of us. But yet again, we're on the second objective. One thing to note, this is going to be one of those tips that's just kind of randomly thrown in here. If you're facing off against Necro and you notice that they have that disable healing ability, I know a lot of people don't really notice this yet or haven't really figured it out. What's the counter to that disable healing? Amulets are going to be the best counter to that. So if you got somebody on support, there's nothing worse than watching somebody get beat down by Ash, try to drink that Shim's Cola, and it never ends up affecting them. Possibly they're getting really close to being down. The one thing you could do is apply those amulets, as they're not going to be healing, they're actually going to be shielding. And if you're the person that's getting beaten down by Evil Ash in that healing moment, if you can get away far enough to possibly use one of those items, use the amulets, it's going to be the best thing to save you from possibly getting downed and just feeding more power into that demon. But you'll notice legendary shotguns putting in some work, one-shotting some of these enemies as long as we're at that close range. You want to keep that in mind with some of these weapons. Range will play a factor in that damage, and with the boomstick and the shotgun, you're definitely going to want to be within about maybe 5 to 6 yards. You kind of want to get as close as possible, and lucky enough with the Hunter class, we've got good dodge ability, so we can close in, dodge their attack, and then quickly pop that shot on their head, effectively maximizing our damage and really getting them down as quick as possible before they can deal some of that heavy damage to some of our allies. But you'll notice the team's doing a great job of applying their own damage. We're sticking together fairly closely. We're doing a lot better than we did on the previous objective about staying closer to the center, and we're just shutting down that demon time and time again. Now, yet again, we get another legendary item. Everything's going great on this run. We're getting a lot of luck when it comes to the chests. We're getting a lot of upgrade materials, and now we're fully maxed out. We're ready for the dark ones. Now, I have to state this right here. For whatever reason, people feel as though as soon as they complete that second objective that they have to get to the dark ones immediately. I've seen it so many times now. It's just so frustrating to realize that some people do not understand that circle's not, that's the only timer we have left. The timer is non-existent by this point. The circle's the only thing that's going to push us when it comes to some type of time limit into getting to the dark ones. Now, I started to try and communicate with Clutch to tell the rest of the team that we need to hit dead end before we go in to actually face off of the dark ones. We want to resupply on our shims, get our ammo up as much as possible, get all of our health up before we roll in. You notice we're looking pretty good on health. Amanda may not be the best on health right now, but she's got plenty of shields on, and we've got plenty of shimps that we can find in this area. There's a ton of houses right here. We're just going to go through them, take on the demon as he's throwing stuff at us, and just be able to move through smoothly as we're all sticking together in each one of these houses. But the whole point is, or the point I'm trying to make, is that you have time to loot some of those areas before you hit the dark ones. You don't need to immediately rush over to that, and it's just absolutely frustrating how many times I've dealt with randoms that one person will immediately rush over the dark ones, get themselves downed, put everybody in a very sticky situation where you're going to put everybody in harm's way. They have to go in, especially if you're within the radius of the dark ones. It's going to be even harder to collect your soul or possibly try to res you, forcing everybody to not be able to loot, and by the time they get to you, try to pull you back up. The circle's already closed into the point where you may be at a location that you've already looted and there's nothing much left, and you're going to be coming up on those bare, you're just going to have to scrape by with whatever resources you may have in that point. Now, by this point, we're just continuing to loot through some of these houses. I've just sped it up because, trust me, this would have been 40 minutes long had we just left all the footage as is, and that's far too long. 30 minutes is still, or 32 minutes, still a pretty long video, but there's a lot of things to cover with this, and there's more things to cover than I will have covered in this video. Try to go with the basics on this one to showcase some of the things that can really go wrong, or some of the ways you can overpower the demon even if you make a couple of mistakes in the beginning. Now, this is when things just go wrong. You'll notice Amanda has decided that, she's done looting. She's going over the dark ones for whatever reason. Again, it may be that lack of communication moment. She may be just trying to take the lead on this. I have no idea what the thought process was on this, but you'll notice she's not only going to the dark ones, but she's starting to circle around to the back side of the dark ones. She's pretty far away from us, and she's on the other side of the main threat in between us. And you'll notice in the bottom left corner that health dropped extremely fast, and she's already down. Now, we're down bad right now. You can still get the dark ones done with 3 people, but in this moment, obviously, you still want all 4 people. The demon's up at level 23, so he's got a substantial amount of upgrades. I may still be able to just immediately delete a lot of his units, but if he catches some people off guard, some of the other teammates around me, this is going to be one of those problematic experiences. Now, wow, I just noticed that right there. As I came out of there, there was the boss unit right there. And since we had no communication, I wasn't even able to recognize that moment. I just hyper focused on trying to save Amanda in this moment. And you notice both Clutch and Willie over there are getting beat down pretty bad. Now I'm just trying to make the res moment right here. I thought they would be able to hold out on their own. I did not realize that the boss unit was out here, but you can see how some of these careless mistakes can lead to the downfall of the entire team. Right now, everything's just gone from bad to worse. Everybody's down besides me right now. I'm trying to get this res off, and I do end up getting Amanda up. You'll notice that now I notice that the boss unit's in play, and you can see how much damage those other two were only able to get done on this boss unit. Sometimes, if you're playing with lower level people, they're not going to be able to dish out as much damage as you, but if you've got one person that's a main DPS, it's one of the biggest reasons why sticking together from start to finish is going to be the best play. But you'll notice again, the double-edged sword of the Hunter class is going to be the fact that we can completely eviscerate our team, and this is one of those problematic experiences. Now, there's also one other thing to talk about right now. You notice he may be, wasting my ammo, but he's shooting the bodies of each one of the survivors that are laying on the ground. Now, this will not further increase the rate at which they bleed out, but it does further increase the amount of time that he will be able to control or possess my character. I don't know whether or not this is something that's still in the game after the patch, but it's extremely frustrating to know that if that demon does possess you and he starts shooting somebody that's laying on the ground bleeding out, it will continuously give him even more infernal energy, as anytime that you're possessing one of the survivors and you hit one of the other survivors, essentially your health bar is your infernal energy, but each time you hit them, you'll be gaining infernal energy back. So in moments like that, some of those demon players will exploit that and be able to utilize you even longer and just waste more of your ammo. And when it comes to the Hunter class, that is extremely detrimental because our melee damage is the weakest in the game. So we can still work around with it. We can still, destroy some of these basic and some of the elite units. But when it comes to boss units, if we don't have any ammo, it's an SOL situation. Now, this looks really bad, and, I'm going to let this play in the background because this goes on for quite a while. I try to solo this demon as much as I possibly can, but I've only got so much ammo, and you can notice that consistently my fear is going up. I'm trying to get the res off. It's slowly getting to the point where I'm about to get possessed. But we need to talk about the Dark Ones specifically. A lot of times people get to the Dark Ones and find themselves dying to really bad demon players, considering they're trying to face off with the demon and his units at the same time as trying to destroy the Dark Ones. There is a couple of things to talk about with destroying the Dark Ones, but in the instance that you roll up on the Dark Ones, you need to know that they're going, or the demon's essentially going to have the same infernal energy continuously being given to him as he would on an objective. So he's able to spawn in all of his units, he's able to spawn his basic, or his boss unit, and throw that at you while you're trying to destroy the Dark Ones. In the event that that happens, you'll notice that the circle does come to a certain location, and it stops, and outside in that outer edge area, I'm not getting attacked by the Dark Ones. If you find yourself in a position where you're facing off with the boss unit and a lot of his actual basic and elite units, you want to go outside of the radius of the Dark Ones. Take all of those out. Put them back on cooldown. That way you can close in and only have to deal with the Dark Ones. And another thing to talk about when it comes to the Dark Ones, once you destroy the Dark Ones, if somebody is down on the ground bleeding out, or if somebody is already dead, you cannot collect their soul, you cannot pick those people up that are down on the ground. You'll be without them for the rest of the game. So you need to make sure before you destroy those Dark Ones, if somebody's downed or if somebody has a soul, you're going to need to bring them back as quickly as possible. Now, you can get it done with 3 people if only one person's down, but I've had so many different matches where we lost it because people did not understand that after you destroy the Dark Ones, you can't bring people back, and it's extremely frustrating to deal with, and I can't stand it, so I've got to throw that out there to make sure that other people know it, so that you can combat with that a lot easier, and to make your life easier when it comes to dealing with the boss unit and some of the demons units before actually having to deal with the Dark Ones themselves. Just making that or just utilizing those tactics is going to make your life a whole lot easier and get you a whole lot more wins when it comes to facing off at this very end portion. Because I know the many times that I played as Demon, the biggest downfall point, no matter what, even if they've done well through each one of the objectives, a lot of people get themselves caught up in that Dark One's radius, getting attacked by them and by me at the same time, and they just flop extremely fast. Like some 4-man teams just immediately in 1 minute, I can completely wipe them out, or at least wipe out 3 of them, and then slowly dwindle down that last person, especially if it's Army of Darkness Ash, because that one is that's a tanky boy right there. But needless to say, you may have noticed that I pulled off almost the impossible. I brought back the entire team, and you'd think we're in for the win now. But I'm getting low on ammo. You may not be able to notice it because obviously my face cam is covering it up right now, or my face essentially in the chair. But by this point, I was getting extremely low on ammo. I knew the boss unit was going to be able to be spawned again soon enough. His cooldown only lasts for so long. He's constantly getting that infernal energy, and I need to switch weapons. Sometimes when you're playing as the hunter class, even though we have that legendary weapon, I know there's no more of that long-range weapon. I've already collected it off the bodies of the other people. I've already run through each one of these houses, but the whole time that I was going and looting before this, I was grabbing up every other ammunition type that I could possibly have in case of the event that I ran out of ammo with the weapon that I'm holding. That way I can switch to another weapon that may be laying around and still have all of that damage that I need. Now the blunderbuss is definitely not the option you really want to work with, but if it's the only option you have, it's going to be much better. And I ended up going with the pistol, considering my damage is still high enough with that pistol to melt that boss. Maybe not as quickly as I would have with the shotgun or crossbow, but I'll still be able to get it done. But sadly enough, there is one undodgeable attack by the boss unit, Evil Ash, and that is the grab attack. And in that moment, that was the end. Extremely frustrating to rewatch and relive, but it perfectly showcases how the separation of the group, how one person going astray can lead to the downfall of the entire team. It can just be extremely detrimental. It's why the #1 tip at the very beginning of the video was stick together from start to finish. I cannot stress that enough. If you stick together, utilize that teamwork, you'll be able to take on any type of demon, even at whatever level you may be at that point with whatever survivor you're playing as. Now, you're obviously going to do a lot better if you have some of these survivors leveled up, more of their skill trees actually filled out, and I'll be doing a bunch of different videos on each one of these survivors, talking about which ones you should level up first. If you want to check out some of that content, obviously hit that subscription button down below, and also if you'd like to see some of this content live, hit that link down in the description. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the game. There's a whole lot of other things to cover. It's hard to put it all into one video, but hopefully some of these strategies that I've talked about with this video, some of the tactics that I've used inside of this can help you out and kind of break the mold of some of those habits and strategies you may have formulated from facing off with poor demons, or possibly trying to split up and trying to really enforce the simple fact that the main name of the game in order to win when it comes to the survivor side is that teamwork and sticking together. You cannot go wrong with that strategy. May take a little bit longer, but trust me, the success rate is going to be much higher if you can utilize this properly and with the right combination of survivors, or even with random combinations of survivors. You should still be able to win in those instances, unless you're just facing off with one of those high level demons that's really exploiting any moment that you may have somebody off on their own, or small interactions that'll just give them that little bit of power constantly. Because those demons can play some very tricky moments, but as long as you're sticking together, you're more than likely going to be able to overpower them, and especially in that ending portion when it comes to the Dark Ones. You just can't go wrong with pulling out from the Dark Ones area, making sure that you're assessing the threats and taking care of them when it comes to the demon side of things, forcing him into cooldowns, and being able to get to that book as quick as possible. But on that note, that's going to be the end of the video. Hopefully this has helped you out. Hopefully it's given you some more insight into how to get more wins on the survivor side of things. And on that note, have a good one.